I wanted to ask you about Chelsea. There's talk now that Brighton are poised to ask for more than 100 million, although there are still a lot of people that are kind of sort of pro Chelsea media as well, saying that this deal will be around the 80 million mark. But what is the latest in terms of Chelsea's pursuit of Caicedo? And will they have him before the pre-season tour of the USA?
Well, obviously that's the big question at the moment. Chelsea flying in 11 days to America for that tour. And so obviously you need to complete the deal early as possible in order to get him on that flight. Obviously, he can still join up with them like after that date, but they want him to be part of it. Like the big downfall for Chelsea last year was the fact that they fell so far behind during pre-season. You know, the whole fitness aspect of their pre-season was way below par. We'll remember the stories around Tuchel and all the mess leading into the season, and they want to avoid any situations like that. So having him through the door as soon as possible would be ideal. Are they likely to wrap up a deal for Caicedo inside 10 days? I mean, it seems unlikely, but it's not impossible. All it's about is understanding what Brighton are actually going to accept here and making sure they avoid a scenario where there's a back and forth in terms of negotiation. And that's what I understand Chelsea have been doing recently. Rather than going steaming in with the first offer and being knocked back, they want to understand like what ballpark they actually have to go in first of all to even be taken seriously. They don't want to be like mugged off like Arsenal kind of were in the end, because that was a complete waste of time. It rattled Brighton. It didn't get them anywhere. And Chelsea are being very much more careful in any negotiations about being respectful to the club that are selling these players, because they don't want to damage relations for now or for later. So I think that Caicedo at £80 million is true. I think that's exactly the figure that Chelsea would be looking to negotiate around. I do think they will go above £80 million, but not as far as £100 million. That's been pretty clear to me, is that Chelsea are very, very conscious about going above £100 million or even close to it. And they think that Brighton will probably negotiate underneath that amount. Of course, Brighton are going to set their stall out as high as they can. Makes sense too, given the fact that Declan Rice is going for £105 million. But also, you know, Caicedo, 1 year in the Premier League, still young and emerging. Yeah, he's probably not quite at that level, would probably be their argument in terms of like why this fee would be there. Declan Rice also, you're playing for an English premium, a player that's in the England setup, things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting one that is definitely kicking off, and there's not a lot of time to get it done in time for pre-season. But Chelsea are transforming now their transfer strategy. They've got a lot of the exits out the door that needed to be made, and now it's about transforming the squad and getting some experience and some nous into that team. I mean, the midfield's been absolutely shattered at the moment. It's poor. I mean, there's nothing there. You know, Enzo Fernandez holding the fort on his own at the moment. He might have Conor Gallagher next to him, might have a 19-year-old Andre Santos next to him, but there doesn't seem like anything there to hold this team together. So Caicedo has to arrive. They've got to win this battle.
Yeah, they absolutely have to. There's talk about them going for Lavia as well, but you know, they've sold a lot of people now, Chelsea. It is about going out there into the market and landing talent and bolstering this squad. Are they going to do anything else in the striker department? You mentioned Vlahovic already on the show today. I've read a few rumours recently that could be a target for Chelsea. Is that something that's starting to advance and get more detailed, or not at this point?
It is, yeah. So I was speaking to somebody who's close to Juve, and it sounds like this one is expected to heat up pretty soon. So Juve have just had a bit of restructuring in their in terms of the officials at the club working and stuff. And there's a new guy working as sporting director who's been promoted internally. And as part of that, and part of adjusting for the new season, meetings are basically planned for the back end of this week, start of next week, to start getting plans in place for them for next year, but also making sure if any departures are tied up quite quickly. And one of the discussions that I'm told will happen is around Vlahovic with Chelsea. Now, Chelsea touched base on Vlahovic 5 or 6 weeks ago now, it must have been, just to see like what the situation was there. Would he be available? Little things like that. And now they're revisiting it. Since then, they haven't. But now I am hearing for the first time noises that Chelsea just want to feel out that situation again. And if that happens, it becomes a lot more interesting in terms of how Chelsea's team is starting to look for next season. Now, we don't know if Juve definitely sell, but they are likely to sell if an 80 million euro bid at least comes through the door for him. I don't think that's bad value. I really don't think that's bad value for a player like Dusan Vlahovic. I think he's outstanding. I think there are very few players in this market that are available that you can sign who automatically increase your chances of scoring goals in this division. If you look at Chelsea last season in terms of goal conversion rate, it was one of the worst in the league, in fact, second or third worst in the league. They just couldn't get shots away. I think they scored an average a goal a game or something. It was so poor. And they need that to improve. The season before that, Chelsea had the fourth best conversion rate in the year. It was a massive drop-off, affected them hugely. You look at what they've got right now. Brozier, Nicholas Jackson, they've got about 7-8 Premier League goals between them coming into the new season. It's not really enough. It's not enough to guarantee that Chelsea get the lift off that they need under Pochettino. And there's always been that thought, will Chelsea actually pull the trigger here and go and get an elite striker for next season? Yesterday, I was writing a piece for Give Me Sport on like the kind of options that might be out there for Chelsea in this window if they to actually look to do that. And I was going through the list. So I had Vlahovic right at the top of it. Obviously, Osimhen is somebody there that you can't ignore in terms of goal pedigree. He'd be the most likely source to fire Chelsea into title contention if they want to get there within one season. But obviously, you're going to have to pay through the nose to do it. Harry Kane, I think, is a pipe dream for now. Lautaro Martinez is on the table if they want to go down that avenue. Pochettino does like him, but at the moment, I've checked in and there's been no contact so far between Chelsea and Lautaro Martinez. Rasmus Højlund is actually somebody that Chelsea haven't actually made any progress with it. Obviously, Man United ahead of them right now. And the only other one that is interesting is Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney, somebody that Chelsea have tracked over the course of last season. They're impressed with his goal record. Obviously, he's suspended at the moment and isn't going to be seen until the new year. So I'm not sure that they would need to rush into anything here, and are unlikely to. But Ivan Toney is somebody that they like. So I would, in terms of like, are they going to sign a 9? I'd actually put Ivan Toney probably higher than other people might imagine I would. But you go through it, and Vlahovic right now is probably the most gettable. We know he's been looked into. We know he's available. He's at a reasonable price. He's clinical. He's of a pedigree better than almost anybody else you could get right now. Certainly better than anyone else in that Chelsea squad. And if that call is made at the end of this week, start of next week, and there's positive signs from it, it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea did look to explore how they could actually get that deal done.
Yeah, I've listened to what you've said in the last few weeks about Chelsea, and I think they're doing great work around buying young players. They're setting this sort of precedent of the future. They're buying, a lot of talent from across Europe. But there's an irony. I know that the famous quote from Alan Hansen, "You can't win anything with kids." The reason that quote was wrong about Man United is that we had a core of Schmeichel, Pallister, Bruce, Cantona, McClare, and that, like, there was a core of senior experienced players that led the class of 92. Chelsea need to add some experience to this team. Not as it's not a dig at the talent they've bought, but you're absolutely right. There needs to be, and look, Vlahovic is not exactly old. He's not exactly 30 years of age. He's in his early mid-20s. But it's just a few players with an extra couple of years experience, international experience, Champions League experience, just to help get through the difficult moments. It's hard for young players when they don't have the experience. And Chelsea fans' expectations are massive. And you do need players that can take that upon their shoulders and go and carry you to that next level, surely.
Yeah, Vlahovic still fits the profile of what Chelsea will be looking for. He's still going to have resale value further down the road. Even Lautaro Martinez would have resale value down the road. He's still young enough to be able to have that. So I don't think that's a massive problem. But it's certainly something that's going to be interesting as you go forward. I mean, you compare them to the class of 92 and what Chelsea are doing right now. It doesn't compare. I mean, what Man United did, like you said, not only did they have a core of players already ingrained in that squad that they could introduce those players in and around, those players had grown up together. They knew each other's game inside out. So Neville, Butt, Beckham, the other Neville, both of them, they all knew each other's game. So that's very different. Chelsea are signing players from every corner of the world. They're signing players from all sorts of different teams. They've been all through different systems. They're coming into a new setup. They're not going to gel like that Man United team did back then. Now, look, this might end up with egg on my face for criticizing so regularly how Chelsea are building this team. I just don't see how it can work for next season. Like, I'm not saying it can't work long term, it can. But Chelsea tried to be patient under Graham Potter and the methods that he had and said they'd stick by him and stick by him and stick by him. Couldn't do it. They didn't have the patience in the end to see it out. Now, Pochettino obviously has more pedigree than Potter, and you'll have to stick by him now, and you have to give him this season. But like, what will be deemed as okay for Chelsea next season? Because you look at that squad at the moment, and the starting 11 could be very good. There's no doubt. Like, they can get an 11 on the pitch for the first day of next season that looks like a very good 11. Is it likely to, over the course of the season, be able to remain in the conversation to make the top 4 of the Premier League? I'd have a bit more skepticism around that. And I think that once you start to have 1 or 2 players falling out of that lineup, especially the leaders and the experienced players in the team, you start to fall away. I mean, Chelsea haven't got a captain for next season at the moment going forward. They don't have, like, if Azpilicueta's going, and you look that Kante's gone, like, the influence that those guys held is huge. Who else is experienced? Lukaku, you're getting rid of him. Aubameyang, getting rid of him. I'm not saying that they should be kept, but I'm just saying in terms of like what they've done in the game, they've experienced things that a lot of players in that squad haven't done. If you're looking for a captain for Chelsea next season, you might be smart giving it to someone like Reece James. 1, it keeps him happy at the club. 2, it takes him to a new level too and gives him a new feeling of responsibility, a new feeling that, I am the future of this club, because Chelsea have lost their identity. Players like Mason Mount leaving is a massive thing. And the fan base, while they might be coming round to the idea of it, he was still somebody that they resonated with. They have very few players left at Chelsea they can actually do that with. And I think that that's why it's important that Chelsea do stick with players like Levi Colwill. Obviously, we talked about the Caicedo deal, and Brighton still hope that they might be able to get Levi Colwill through the door and sign him. Just don't see it. I really don't see that Chelsea are going to entertain selling Levi Colwill Nightwell. I think it's more likely that Levi Colwill is in Chelsea's starting 11 at the start of the new Premier League season than it is that he's joining Brighton anytime soon.